everybody. Assalamu alaikum. I hope you're having a wonderful day. Make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the notify button so you know when you're getting new episodes. And we just want to grow this project. I thank you in advance. Without further ado, let's get it rolling. The Shout Out Show. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, everybody. This is your brother, Preacher Monster, host of the SOS The Shout Out Show. Welcome to our Sunday edition. I always give some housekeeping for people that are coming from the first time to the show. We appreciate you coming. We ask that you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and accordingly, we hope that you're going to have an excellent experience and we give you something worth your time. For all the, I want to say, the Shout Out Show soldiers, if you will. The Shout Out Show family that comes all the time. I want to thank you. Appreciate you for tuning in and making me feel like I actually have something to say. So beyond that, brothers and sisters, I have to just recap yesterday. We had a guest on yesterday. You know, we don't have many guests, but this woman was special. Sister Rakia Abdul Mukatalim was amazing yesterday. She spoke on a whole lot of ideas about forgiveness, about clarity, about how you grow your spirit, about how you keep your faith. And I mean, it was amazing, brothers. It was amazing. So let me give my shout outs early. We got people in the spot. There we go. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Sister Sophia, Sister Reed, rest and feel better. Rest and feel better. Yes, thank you. I appreciate it. Yes, yesterday was a beautiful show. And we got our foot soldier. Without this sister, there is no shout out show. Sister Sultana Whitfield, thank you for coming on the show. Sister Mujahid, all the way, all the way from Charlotte, North Carolina. So we got people all over the place today. But like I said, yesterday was one of those shows, man. I don't know about you, but I remember watching the show after the show at broadcast. And I mean, this woman dropped some gems. I was like, we got to have on more guests like that, because I was just in a real thankful place. You know, it's one thing when you're in a thankful place, but your mind changes and you realize exactly why you're thankful. It's easy to say, alhamdulillah, da-da-da. I'm talking about when you drill down as to why you're happy, you drill down as to, you know, why you're grateful. I'm going to tell you, man, it changes your perspective. It totally changes your perspective. I mean, literally, that type of perspective changes the world. That woman came on this show yesterday. I mean, she dropped pure science. Apologies for some of the technical difficulties, but what she said, how she said it, and with the intent she said it, I mean, you can't beat it, brothers and sisters. You cannot beat it. So today's show, I know we normally do the Sunday Funnies. I was going to do the your top 5 list. We're going to do that next week. I'm going to keep with the information and the energy that Sister Rakia brought here yesterday. And I'm going to talk about blame. I think we need to talk about blame. Before we get into the political season we're already in, before we get deep into it, I think we ought to talk about blame. Now, I've broken down blame, B.L.A.M.E, from blame to, because looking at me ain't easy. Now, let me give you, brothers and sisters, let me give you the actual... Let me give you the story about how I got to blame. This is not me. I'm going to give credit where credit is due. The rapper KRS-One, Knowledge Reigns Supreme over nearly everybody, was having a talk with Nick Cannon on Cannon's class. And I really respect KRS-One. Let's just say that. All the way from Criminal Minded. I'm talking about all the way back. So he's a philosopher in a lot of regards, man. He was just talking about how the human condition loses balance when the human condition doesn't realize that it's not in balance with the rest of the world or the world that's around it. And he said his wife came up with this thing. She said blame, and she said no. He said not just blame. He said the acronym for blame that she came up with, Mrs. KRS-One. Blame is because looking at me ain't easy. That's 5 hard letters, 5 hard words. Because looking at me ain't easy. And I really, really, really dug down deep on this. I said, because, there's such a lack of accountability when we're having such a groundswell of advocacy. People like to be right. People like to be right. People like to be on the right side of things. But it's interesting. Nobody wants to be wrong, because when you have to be wrong, that's a very insular thing, if you will. When you're wrong. When I say insular, I mean that it's an organic thing. We talked about failure before. And one thing about failure is that to be successful in failure is that you have to take accountability. I'm saying you have to own it. And I'm saying that this moniker right here, and I'm going to drill down on it. Because looking at me ain't easy. I'm going to actually break that down a little bit to some of the notes that I had. We say because as a misnomer. We say because as a reason. Actually, it's cause. Because. There has to be a cause there, right? There has to be a cause. Because. Like the cause have to be there. Like we all talk about religious texts and things like that. That be is existence. The cause is the thing it causes a reaction. That cause is the thing that gives us a call to action, if you will. And that we find ourselves in a situation where we have to make a decision one way or another. Are you going to work hard or you're not going to work hard? Are you going to get to work early or you're going to get to work late? Are you going to steal that or are you going to pay for that? Are you going to drink this or are you going to put it down? Are you going to sniff this or you're not going to sniff? You're going to shoot it? You know what I'm saying? Am I going to be responsible for my kids? Listen, be is the predecessor for cause. And I thought about that. I said because. Be is like being, but because is interesting because a cause, brothers and sisters, is a thing that puts us in a scenario where things are put into action. You see what I'm saying? That cause gives us the left or right, the up or down, the in or out, the right or wrong in many regards. But we haven't seen it like that. Looking is about perception. Looking is about perception. We are in a very, very conscious period right now. Let me shout out. Yes, Miss Melody, but that's not KRS's current wife. But Miss Melody she was a powerful lyricist. I agree, but that's not his wife right now. Okay, that whole thing of looking, brothers and sisters, is that it's a very organic thing. When you look at yourself, you see your faults. You see your faults. You also see your potential. You also see where, in some regards, that we may be lacking skills, but you also see an opportunity. Opportunity. When I say because looking is something that allows us to frame literally what our opportunity costs are going to be when we do something. Now, let me tell you guys about opportunity costs. Opportunity is basically for me to do opportunity A, it may not allow me to do opportunity B. Or in some regards, if I do opportunity A, maybe it will lead to opportunity B or lead to opportunity C. It all depends on what that particular driver is. But that whole thing, because looking at me, when I think about this, you have a whole scenario. You have a whole situation out here they're not talking about. We have a whole movement here. I didn't realize it till I was on a call today about a TV show. You have a whole movement called anti-maskers. Anti-maskers. Now, people, we've never, ever heard this before. This is a legion or movement or constituency of people that believe they do not have to wear their mask. Now, I believe, yes, you don't have to wear your mask, but it doesn't mean that you can exercise that around me or the elderly or children, because you don't literally control that space. And it was interesting, brothers and sisters, very interesting, because when we look at blame, ironically, that's how I look at our leaders. The willingness to be humble to say I made a mistake. The willingness to say, listen, that was my call. Let me own up to that. Let me take ownership of our idea. And you move on with your life. Politics, brothers and sisters, for the last, I don't know, since I've been born, has always been built upon who you can put blame on. And then the funny part is, why do you want to put blame on them? Why? Because looking at me ain't easy. Why do we blame our spouses? Because looking at me ain't easy, right? Kids aren't successful in school. What do we blame the kids? Why? Because looking at me ain't easy. Oh, this is a gem. I can't remember Karis's wife's name, but this is a gem. Because in this thing that we're talking about, that whole idea of because looking at me ain't easy, it's a reflexive. It's a reflexive for everything we do, even with religion, even with politics, sports. It's always a reflective of something that you didn't do. You know, I watch a lot of basketball. I watch a lot of sports, not as much as I used to. But I love the idea of when a guy makes a bad play, instead of him looking at the person, he goes like this, he goes, my bad. That's how we say it in the street. My bad. You're wrong and incorrect. Yo, whoa, time. My bad. Look how that just diffuses the situation. If you go, yeah, but it just keeps going, but my bad is this whole thing of how we accept blame. And I'm not talking about, the superficial stuff. I'm talking about blame that frames character. I'm talking about blame that frames policy. When we say blame, I want you to say because looking at me ain't easy. You could say because looking at you ain't easy, but because looking at me ain't easy is interesting because it gives us a specific type of diatribe about how we talk to ourselves. When I say how we talk to ourselves, like for me, I'm very hard on myself about a lot of things. As a comedian, I'm very critical. It comes from wanting to be a jazz musician so much that I probably taught myself out of being a jazz musician because at a young age, I couldn't play like Train. I couldn't play like Sonny Rollins. I couldn't play like Mr. Alexander, who's my music teacher. And you know what? It was hard to pick up that saxophone and go, hey, preach. As hard as you working right now, you still stink. Hence, I'm in comedy. All right. But the thing that resonates with this, because looking at me ain't easy, the thing that easy part is interesting. It's a tangible understanding about our condition, how we see life, how we see action, how we see hard work. When you hear ain't easy, it's two reactions. I'm either going to quit or I'm going to make it easy or I'm going to make it functional. But you'd be surprised at how many people actually quit. And the sad part about when they quit, when it ain't easy, the sad part is you're the last one to know. Let me give a shout out to Miss Eleanor. Simone Parker. Yeah, that's right. That's KRS's one present wife. Yes. How you doing, Miss Eleanor? And I appreciate you. And thank you so much for coming on the show. Everybody, keep your prayers for Miss Eleanor and Sister Ree. I appreciate that. But when I looked at this whole thing, because looking at me ain't easy, in a weird way, I looked at B.L.M. Some of y'all are going to preach. Where you going with this? B.L.M. out of blame, it's an interesting thing because they take no blame. They accept no blame. Everything else someone else has done is their fault, and this is the corrector. But when you look at any great civil rights organization, movement, the SNCC, the Panthers, they had a chain of command that demanded accountability. Now, no knock on Black Lives Matter. I don't know who runs Black Lives Matter. I don't know. But coming up in a traditional understanding of leadership, what I thought was amazing was that we're not talking about leadership anymore. I did a show a couple days ago talking about why I talk about why we need to protect our women. I did that show. I did a show said why we need to protecting our women. So I think is what it was. And the reason you had to protect women is because women are the last holders of virtue in this whole idea of principle. And the thing about blame calls into account your principles. Like for anybody who does any kind of anthropological study on race or race identity politics, they'll give you a whole lot of things about race and positioning and da 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 da. There was a book I read. I've said this before, Purification of the Heart. What I love about Purification of the Heart is that it took the idea of racism and put it in a bigger scope in the universe of oppression. Like we now talk about oppression and racism, oppression. And it's interesting because I don't want people to think that they're the same. Racism comes from oppression. Let's be very clear. Racism comes from oppression. Oppression is an oft-used word because, brothers and sisters, when you talk about oppression has components. What are the components? Arrogance, envy, and iniquity. Arrogance, envy, and iniquity. None of those things, arrogance, envy, and iniquity, have to do with your color, your religion, how much money you got in your pocket, where you live, how much education you have. It has nothing to do with it. It has to do with inner perspective. It has to do with your character. And the thing that I appreciate most about this thing from Sister Simone, thank you for giving me her name, is what she said, because looking at me ain't easy. I ain't even had to stop. And I had to reevaluate choices I've made in my life, choices I made in my career, choices I made in my family. And you know what? I think one of the most refreshing things was you had to step back. Now, of course, this comes on the heels of having an incredible woman on the show yesterday. But it reminded me, when we say blame because looking at me ain't easy, the thing that allows us to look at ourselves is the fact that we have a mandate that we need to look at ourselves. And once we have a look at ourselves, we can forgive ourselves. And once we forgive ourselves, we can understand where forgiveness comes from. This is a powerful, powerful thing. I don't even know if the sister knew that it was going to be this deep. I didn't know it was going to be this deep. I couldn't wait to get on here. Let me give a shout out. Big Z from Toledo. Walaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother. Appreciate you, man. I hope everything is going down well in Toledo, inshallah. But the capper, brothers and sisters, because there's always a thing about, how do you apply this to life? When I say apply to life, how do you apply it to your social life, your religious life, your community life, your economic life? The thing is, if you can master this acronym of blame, let me say this again, let me slow down. If you can master this acronym of blame, the less blame you have means that you're more attractive to yourself. You love yourself more. You're more real with yourself. And in that organic containment, if you will, the rest of the world the rest of the world can't penetrate. There are people, and I call them OGs, who will call you out in a minute. It's nothing like being called out by an elder and they straighten you back up, and you may feel like you drag me over the curb, over the coals here, but I realized that they understood I was not taking accountability for my actions. And it wasn't them coming at me directly, it was them in a kind way turning me back to my actions, turning me back to my words, turning me back to my attention, and say, look at what you said, when you said it, how you said it. Is that what you meant? And if you didn't mean it, then automatically you sought correction. You sought correction. There's a big thing in the religious community. You do something, I repented. No, you repented, but you didn't accept the blame. You might have repented, but you didn't accept the blame. Because when you accept the blame, once you have that clarity, if you will, whoever you did wrong, you can go to that person with an open heart and say, hey, listen, this problem emanated from within me. See, because too often people repent. Talk to God and we worked it out. I'm like, yeah, but you can't hurt God. You can't hamper God. You can't backstab God. You can't backslide. You can't hurt the eternal. But the people around you, you can hurt. The people you lied to, you can hurt. The people you cheated, you can hurt. The people who you intentionally oppressed, you can hurt. And the repentance, brothers and sisters, is a pathway, right, to redemption. You must redeem yourself. And because we don't have that now, we can say leadership, da-da-da. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. We already know this. But because you don't have that, there's an imbalance in society. There are those people who have it, those people who know they need it, and those people that will straight out rebuke it. And when you get in that space, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm saying it's a bad thing. Because understanding this, even if you're not religious, understand that your words, your actions are connected all the way across. I was talking to my brother, JT, about blame earlier today. And when we had this scenario, this is how society is. Let's say that you have a banana, right? You have a banana. Walaikum assalam. Hey, what's going on, Sister Jean? Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. But let's say you have a banana and you eat that banana, and instead of putting that banana peel in the trash can, you throw it on the ground, you walk on about your way. Later that night, a person comes past, the street's dark, they're walking up the road, they're looking for cars and everything else. They slip on that banana and they hurt themselves. Who's to blame? Well, if you're not around, clearly people say, this person should have looked at the ground, and people don't walk looking down at the ground at night. Let's just call it what it is. You're looking for a whole lot of things. Banana peels are not it. But if you properly apply blame, as according to Sister Simone, you're going to understand that it was a character issue. That banana peel, there was a trash can there. You chose not to do it. You chose to be selfish. You chose to take the banana peel, put it on the floor. You knew. In fact, you decided to be one-sided, myopic, thinking it's all about me. My business is done. And I'm saying, if you multiply that, if you put that in an algorithm, if you will, that type of attitude, it will literally bring you to where we are right now. So I don't want to be too hard, but I'm excited. I'm excited about blame right now. There's a little spark in my heart about blame. That spark is built by the fact that I feel the exact same way. That we are a world that's connected. And blame is not meant for us to feel bad about one another. It's meant for us to be honest. Because if you're honest with yourself and honest with other people, you create a new paradigm in terms of what you want society to be and what you want to be. Your opportunity costs are way different when you have mastered this whole idea of blame. You never want to get up in the morning and look in the mirror and not want to see you. Now, I'm not talking about, if you're looking rough or your dew is whipped or, you got slobber going on. That's a physical thing. I'm talking about internally, your perspective of yourself. You never want to get to that point. And I'll give you guys something that's dope. It's not dope, it's deep. Because when people get to the point where they can't accept blame, they can't accept responsibility, what happens is they can't accept life. Let me say that again. When you can't accept blame or responsibility or even accountability, it's hard to accept life. And right now, at this very moment, as I'm talking to you guys on this program, there's somebody who's struggling, who doesn't understand the importance of blame, meaning that you're resolving your conflicts with yourself. You are resolving insecurities. You are talking your way to a certain type of mental health, spiritual health. And if even that little piece, if it leads you to getting help, professional help, that little piece is the thing that's such a huge rock. I mean, it's a huge rock. You know, I'm going to have a show, inshallah, about mental health very soon. I'm lining up my guests, but just talking about the mental health behind COVID, because people are stuck in a conundrum that COVID has hit and there's no one to blame. Let me say that again. COVID is hit and no one to blame. You can't blame a pandemic. You can't blame a plague. It's out of your hands. It's out of your logical understanding and reason. None of us could tell why somebody else got sick. Why somebody lived to be 100, somebody lived to be 2. Nobody can. But this idea of blame, this idea of blame, brothers and sisters, somebody put it on a t-shirt. I'm going to try and find Sister Simone and put this joint on a t-shirt because it is genius. It is genius. And let me tell you why it's genius from my perspective. Because this right here is straight from Quran. Surah 49, the apartments, this right here, oh, this is deep, cuts deep. But it's meant to be something, it cuts deep because, you know, certain things you got to let breathe. You got to aerate. You got to let it out. And this right here is a pathway to be able to do that. Like we all have things that we wish we'd have done in our lives and da-da-da and da-da-da, you know, and if I'd have done this, I'd have done that. Or if you did this, me, and we get into this blame. Now, the other part of blame is blame game. Because when you don't understand blame, you will move to the blame game. And the blame game is not the same as blame. The blame game is a small microcosm of who you are, looking not to be that person, looking not to take responsibility. So I know we're a little bit over, brothers and sisters, but I hope that you enjoyed this. And remember, you know, when we talk about blame from here on, brothers and sisters, don't think about the blame game or the shame game. When we think about blame, we're talking now about what? Because looking at me ain't easy, but it ain't impossible. Brothers and sisters, thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. See you tomorrow, inshallah. Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your Shout Out Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next Shout Out Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarif Tar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out tarifatar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.